Don't touch it.
3 words.
Soft. Calm. No shouting. But I saw him freeze, like someone had just pulled a wire in his spine. I wasn't joking. I wasn't paranoid.
And the worst part,
I knew I was right. That night, my husband Jason was doing the dishes. I was wiping down the counter. One of those small, married life habits you don't notice until they're missing. We'd just finished a simple dinner.
frozen pizza.
The thin kind. Slightly too salty. The kind that reminds you with every bite that you've been out of fresh groceries for days.
The doorbell rang.
I dried my hands on the kitchen towel and walked over. A package. No name. Just a cheerful birthday sticker slapped on top. Jason opened it like it was a pair of socks, mildly curious. Not particularly invested. "Oh," he said. "Your parents sent me something."
I glanced over.
"Really?" I smiled, pretending it was no big deal. He lifted a sleek black velvet box from inside the packaging.
Neat.
Shiny. I stepped closer, slowly. My heart kicked once, twice, like something had hooked onto it and started reeling me in. And just as he was about to lift the lid, I said, "Don't touch it." Jason turned to me, surprised. "What?" I gripped the dish towel tighter, then repeated it clearer this time.
Don't
"Touch it." My voice was dry, but steady. He looked at me like I just told him to store the watch in the freezer. "Sarah, it's just a gift." I shook my head, stepped forward, and wrapped the box gently in the towel. Even through the fabric, it felt wrong, too cold. "This isn't right," I whispered. "Why not?" "I'm not sure yet, but something's off." We sat down at the table. He didn't laugh. I didn't either. No one touched the box again. I took out my phone, snapped a photo of it, then started digging. Manufacturer logo. Box design.
Serial number.
Price listings. It didn't take long. "Jason?" I handed him my phone.
$3.
$800. For a Rolex. From my parents. People who had never spent more than $200 on anyone ever. We both sat in silence for a few seconds. I could hear my own pulse, pounding behind my ears. My name is Sarah Dawson Miller. I'm 36 years old. I grew up in what people used to call a model family, at least from the outside. I was the responsible one. The kid who always did the right thing. The one adults called too serious. A little intense. And my brother, Derek. He was full of potential. Creative. A lovable rebel. I pumped the gas. He lit the fire. And now, staring at that watch, I knew my parents had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. And the worst part was, they thought I wouldn't notice. If you've ever had to choose between doing what's right and protecting your family, you're not alone. Hit subscribe, like, or leave a comment if this story resonates with you. Next, I'll tell you why just 6 months ago, I invited my parents to work at the nonprofit my husband and I built from scratch. And why today, I handed them both termination letters. I guess if you asked my parents, they'd still say they treated my brother and me the same. And on the surface, that might have looked true, but if you peeled it back, just one layer, you'd see it. I was the checklist child. Clean your room. Write your thank you cards. Get straight A's. Apply to colleges early. Don't forget Grandma's birthday. Meanwhile, Derek. He was allowed to figure things out. That was the phrase they always used. He's figuring it out. Sarah, not everyone has to have it all together at your age. At my age, I was 14. He was 17 and had just dropped out of high school for the second time. They called it a mental reset. I called it what it was, an escape hatch they kept open only for him. So I became reliable. over-functioning. I made myself useful, manageable, the kind of daughter who doesn't need much attention, just space to carry the family's weight. And years later, when I met Jason, that part of me still hadn't changed. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He wasn't what my mom would have called husband material. But he had this quiet way of showing up for people. Always. No matter what. When I met him, he was serving hot meals out of a church basement, using borrowed tables and volunteers with hearts too big for their bodies. I fell fast, not like the swoony, high school drama kind, more like a deep exhale after holding your breath for years. Eventually, I started volunteering with him, Saturdays at first, then weekends, then all the time. And when we got married, it wasn't a fancy affair, just close friends. A small rented space, and a reception where the leftovers were boxed up for the shelter. That's how much the work mattered to us. We built the charity from the ground up. The Haven Table, a community meal program in Minneapolis that served fresh, hot food to people who'd been forgotten by the rest of the world. It grew slowly, but it grew. One location, then two, a third just before the pandemic. Jason handled operations. I did admin, accounting, strategy. We weren't rich by any means, but we were proud, grounded, doing something real. And then my parents started talking about retirement. They were struggling. Hank, my dad, had worked in public school admin for decades. My mom, Linda, was a part-time office clerk. They didn't have much saved. Their pensions barely covered utilities, and their roof had leaked for 3 years straight. Meanwhile, Derek was still living with them, starting businesses that never paid $1 in taxes. So we offered them something. Not charity, not pity, a chance to stay involved. My dad could help with sourcing, inventory. My mom could assist with events, volunteers, light office work. It felt like a win. They had purpose. We had help from people we trusted. The mission felt more united than ever. 6 months ago, everything still looked good. Derek finally moved out, said he'd launched a tech startup and had to be independent now. He even bought a condo. Not rented. Bought. Downtown. View of the river. He wouldn't say where the money came from. NDAs. Patents. Hush-hush deals. The usual Derek vagueness. But louder this time. More polished. I asked a few questions. He dodged with charm, the way he always had. Jason raised an eyebrow. I told him not to worry. Around the same time, my dad came to us with a file folder and an excited gleam in his eye. I've found a new food supplier, he said. Better prices, better quality, local, small business. These guys care about what they do. Jason reviewed the proposal. It looked okay. The numbers made sense. We trusted him. We signed. That contract was supposed to save us money, help us expand. Instead, it almost destroyed everything we built. 3 weeks after the switch, complaints started trickling in. At first, it was subtle. Food tastes different. Is this a new recipe? Then came the stomach cramps, nausea, vomiting. One man ended up in the ER after eating nothing but our meals for 2 days. Jason snapped into audit mode. He doesn't yell when he's angry. He investigates. He started calling shelters, collecting invoices, requesting vendor data, checking deliveries. And what he uncovered made him physically ill. Expired ingredients, substituted meats, unlabeled cans, food that looked healthy on paper but had no business being fed to anyone, let alone people relying on us. We scheduled a meeting with my parents. Jason confronted them directly, calm but firm. He laid out the evidence. My mother waved it off. People exaggerate. It's probably unrelated. My dad. Defensive? We can't just cancel a contract over a few complaints. It'll damage relationships. What relationships? I asked. We run a charity, not a catering business. But he kept pushing. He didn't want it to cancel. Didn't want to start over. Didn't want to explain why this deal had become so important to him. That should have been the moment I knew, but I still wanted to believe the best. The next day, Jason's birthday arrived. We weren't doing much. Just takeout and a movie. A quiet evening. Until the box came. Wrapped in velvet. Neat. Heavy. A Rolex. That was when it all clicked.
My stomach knew it before my brain did.
This wasn't a gift. It was a message. A bribe disguised in black velvet. And it hadn't come from strangers. It came from my parents. That moment was the last time I saw them as just family. From that point on, they became something else entirely. The next morning, we didn't speak much. Jason made coffee. I burned the toast. Not on purpose. But I didn't make another batch. Either. Somehow the smell of burnt bread felt appropriate. The Rolex was still on the counter, wrapped in the same dish towel from the night before. Unopened. Untouched. Like it was watching us. I wrote 2 letters and sealed them in plain envelopes. Jason didn't ask what I wrote. He didn't need to. He picked up the watch like it was ticking, like it could explode. Used a clean towel, held it by the corners, avoided touching the leather strap, the velvet box, anything. His hands moved with quiet precision. Just clarity. We drove in silence to the office. No arguments. No music. Just the kind of stillness you brace yourself in right before the sky breaks open. When we arrived, my parents were already there, sitting at their desks, pretending to be busy. My mom kept rereading the same email. My dad scrolled his phone with a spreadsheet, open like some kind of digital alibi. Neither of them looked up. Jason and I didn't stop at reception. We went straight to the break room. Neutral territory. No donors. No volunteers. No one to witness what was about to happen. He placed the box on the table. I handed them the letters. What's this? My dad asked. His tone clipped. Open them, I said. 2 simple sheets of paper. Formal. Polite. Termination of employment. Effective immediately. 1 month's pay. No further involvement. My mom looked like she couldn't swallow. You're firing us, she said. Yes. My dad stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. We're your family. Not anymore, I replied. I don't think I fully believed those words until they left my mouth. But once they did, I felt it, like something in my spine finally straightened. He looked at me like I was speaking another language, like I had forgotten my lines in a script he wrote. We've done nothing wrong, he said. I pulled out my phone, opened my browser, and turned it toward them. A listing for the exact Rolex. $3. 800. Clean. Verified. Traceable. Want to tell me where this came from? No answer. You couldn't afford to fix your boiler last winter. I paid that bill. You called it a loan. I never asked for it back. But now, suddenly, you're giving my husband a watch that costs more than our rent. Still nothing. Where did the money come from? My father shrugged. It was a gift. An incredibly expensive one. We thought Jason deserved something nice. My mom chimed in. Is generosity a crime now? No, I said. But it's suspicious. And that cracked the dam. They started talking at once. Fast. Defensive. Panicked. You don't understand how hard it's been. The supplier was legitimate. We were just trying to support Derek. That last part hit me like a slap. What does Derek have to do with this? I asked. Silence. My dad looked down. My mom turned away. Why were you pushing so hard for that catering company? Why all the urgency? The resistance. Why lie about the complaints? People got sick. You knew that. They were exaggerating. My dad muttered. One man was hospitalized. No response. You had something to gain from that contract. Didn't you? My mother snapped. We didn't do anything illegal. My dad followed. We just made a smart deal. You're the one making it ugly. I leaned forward.
So that's where the money came from.
They didn't deny it. Didn't say a word. And that silence, it told me everything. You knew what you were doing, I said. You gave him that watch knowing what it could look like, knowing what it would mean. You knew what could happen if it got out. My mother crossed her arms. It's not like we told him to accept it, but you gave it to him anyway. You're being dramatic.
No, I'm being clear.
I stood up, breath shaking, but steady. You put this entire organization at risk.
For what?
So Derek could have another fake company. So you could play business mentors in your retirement. My dad finally snapped. Do you want to be poor your whole life? You want to keep scraping by while people like that catering company make real money? People got sick. No one died. He shot back. And then he said it. You care more about how things look than about your own family.
I didn't raise my voice.
I just nodded slowly.
No,
I said.
I care about right and wrong.
And what you did was wrong. All of it. My mother's lips trembled.
Don't you need some time to think this through?
I've already thought it through.
I'm done.
You don't mean that. My dad said, but I did. I want you to leave now. And they did. No shouting. No slam doors. Just the quiet shuffle of shoes across vinyl flooring. Like they knew something had broken and it wasn't fixable. I stood in the doorway and watched them leave. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, holding the silence like something sacred. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the daughter. I felt like the grown-up in the room. But of course, it didn't end there. Because some people, when they lose control, don't walk away. They come back swinging. Later that night, I was folding laundry when the front door thundered. Not a knock, not a buzz, a pounding. Like someone wanted to break it down or break through me. Jason met me at the door. I opened it slowly. Derek. His face was red, his eyes wild. What did you do? He barked. No hello. No pause. Just accusation. Jason stepped up behind me. Calm as always. Why don't you tell us what this is about? Derek looked past me, scanning the room. You know exactly what this is about.
You're going to ruin us.
You're going to get us all killed. And just like that, I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just family drama. This was something darker, something dangerous. And we were only at the beginning. Derek stood in our doorway like a threat waiting to be believed. You canceled the contract, he hissed. His voice cracked with rage, but underneath it,
I heard something worse.
You were supposed to stay quiet, he said. Just let it run. Now the deal's dead and people are asking for their money back. What people? I asked, keeping my voice flat. He hesitated. A beat too long. The kind of people who don't send polite emails, he muttered. And just like that, the puzzle clicked. The urgency.
The resistance.
The strange loyalty to a supplier no one had vetted.
Derek hadn't just benefited from the catering deal.
He'd orchestrated it.
You took money,
I said, the words coming slow, deliberate. You took someone's money to push that deal through. He didn't deny it. He just folded his arms and said, I didn't know the food was bad. Of course you didn't. I snapped. Because you never ask questions when money's involved. I was helping the family.
No?
Jason said, stepping forward. His voice was low, steady. You were helping yourself. The silence that followed was thick, a silence filled with all the years we'd pretended Derek would grow up, that he'd figure it out, that there was still time for him to become a decent man. If you bring the supplier back, this can still be fixed, Derek said. He looked at us like we owed him something, like our refusal to lie was the real crime.
We're not bringing them back,
I said. You should think about what happens if you don't. I took a step forward. Was that a threat? It's a fact, he said. We didn't slam the door in his face. But it was close. 3 days later, the fallout began. It started with online reviews, anonymous accounts, local forums, even our charity's Google page. Posts like, "Did you know the director drives a car worth more than your donations? Ask them where the Rolex came from. The homeless aren't getting fed. The directors are feeding themselves." The photo of the watch showed up next.
Blurry,
but unmistakable. The same black velvet box. Our tea towel even made a cameo. Then came the messages to donors. The hashtags. The quiet withdrawals. 2 sponsors paused their funding. One fundraising event was canceled without explanation. Inside the office, everything slowed. Staff started whispering in corners. Volunteers didn't show up. Our coordinator cried in the kitchen after a phone call she wouldn't explain. And then, late one night,
my phone rang.
The caller ID said, MN Department of Charitable Oversight. I didn't even know that was a real agency. Apparently, it is. They'd received tips. Allegations. They wanted to schedule a call about concerns surrounding financial mismanagement and donor integrity. The woman on the line was polite, which somehow made it worse.
When I hung up,
Jason was already looking at me. He didn't ask what the call was about. I think he already knew. The next morning, we received an email. No name.
No greeting.
No signature. Just one line. If the supplier is reinstated and our positions restored, the attacks will stop. That was it. A digital ransom note. I read it 3 times. The 4th time, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so cowardly, so desperate, that it made the next step almost too clear. Jason sat beside me. We should report it. I nodded. Yes. Tomorrow. That night, neither of us slept. Not really. We lay in bed, eyes open, breathing in silence. I thought about every mistake I'd made. Every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. Every time I told myself family mattered more than boundaries. They had used that. They had counted on my silence. They had gambled on my loyalty. But they forgot I wasn't alone anymore. They forgot about Jason. And they forgot who they raised. The next morning, we went to the police. We brought everything. Emails, screenshots, invoices, testimonies. We explained the catering switch, the complaints, the timeline, the Rolex, the fallout, the threats. I even printed the email, just so I could hand it to someone. The officer who took our statement didn't flinch. You're not the first, she said. We've been seeing more of this family or not. You did the right thing by coming in. I wanted to believe her. I needed to, because I wasn't just protecting our charity. I was protecting every person we served, every meal we gave out, every volunteer who showed up believing we were who we claimed to be. And in that moment, standing inside that police station, under fluorescent lights and stale air, I understood something. Doing the right thing doesn't feel good at first. It feels like doubt, like nausea, like betrayal. But beneath that, beneath the ache and the heartbreak,
There's clarity.
A new kind of peace. One that doesn't come from approval or tradition or bloodlines, but from knowing you stood your ground, even when it cost you everything. That was the moment the line was drawn.
From here on out.
I wasn't just reacting. I was done explaining. Done protecting people who put others in harm's way.
And if that meant burning every bridge I was born into,
so be it. Because I was finally ready to build something better. We didn't walk out of the police station triumphant.
there were no high fives.
No swelling soundtrack in the background. Just a quiet kind of resolve. The kind that grows in the pit of your stomach when you finally stop looking away. Back at the office, the silence was different. Less fear. More waiting.
Our staff had heard the rumors.
They'd seen the posts. Some of them had started to wonder if not out loud. Then, certainly in private. So, we called a meeting. All hands. No exceptions. I stood at the front of the conference room while Jason passed out printed packets evidence. Timelines. Documentation. Then I told the truth. Everything. The supplier. The unsafe food. The bribe disguised as a gift. How my parents and brother were involved. How we'd filed a report. How we were being targeted because we refused to stay quiet. No embellishments. No dramatics. Just facts.
And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time.
I asked for their trust. I told them we would rebuild. But not with secrets. Not with silence.
And if they wanted to walk away,
I wouldn't blame them. The room was still. Then one of our kitchen managers,
Kelly, a woman who'd been with us since the church basement days, stood up and said,
"Let's clean this mess up. Together." And just like that, we got back to work. We drafted a public statement.
Simple.
Transparent. Verified by our legal counsel. We acknowledged the supplier issue. We explained the investigation. We took responsibility, but not blame. We clarified that the leadership team had received no financial benefit, that we had immediately terminated the supplier upon discovery, and that we were cooperating with authorities. We attached documentation, names redacted, but facts intact. Then we posted it. On our site, on social media. We sent it to every donor,
Sponsor,
and partner.
and we made sure the tone wasn't defensive.
Just honest. The next day, our inbox flooded, not with outrage but support. Donors replied with words like courage and integrity. Volunteers came back. A few sent coffee and pastries with handwritten notes that said things like, "Thank you for doing the right thing." And while the trolls kept talking, the real community started listening again. But that wasn't the end of it. Because 3 weeks later, it hit the headlines. Front page of the local paper. A 2-page spread in a regional magazine. Even a short feature on public radio. They called it the charity that turned itself in. But what really caught people's attention wasn't the scandal. It was the family.
Me.
The daughter who fired her parents. The sister who shut her brother out. The whistleblower who still showed up every morning to serve soup. And when the public turned their gaze, they didn't look at us with suspicion. They looked at my parents. The investigation went federal. Bank records. Emails. The $15,000 wired to my father's account 3 weeks before the supplier contract was signed. The Rolex was just the most visible piece. They called it conspiracy,
Fraud.
and attempted bribery. They were charged, sentenced to 18 months in a federal facility, fined $50. Most of their savings gone. Derek didn't escape either. His condo was seized. His startup was declared a shell company. He got probation and 200 hours of community service at a food bank. Of all places, the supplier. Their business license was revoked. The CEO sentenced to a year in prison. Their name became a case study in every nonprofit compliance seminar across the state. And us. We were cleared. Officially. Publicly. Permanently. But none of that felt like revenge. Not really. Revenge is emotional. It's messy. It tastes sweet for a moment and sour forever. What this was cleaner. Justice, consequences, truth, spoken out loud and backed with action. I didn't cheer when the sentences were handed down. I didn't post anything smug. I didn't even respond to the letter my parents sent from prison. Because by then, I had learned something bigger. What you lose when you stand up to your family isn't always what hurts the most. It's what you gain that changes you. Self-respect, integrity, peace. We got a letter one day from a teenager who volunteered once during school and had followed our story online. They wrote, "You made me believe that people can do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing." I cried reading that, not because it was sentimental, but because someone had finally said out loud what I'd been hoping was true, that we hadn't just survived this. We'd risen from it. The truth is,
We never set out to take anyone down.
we just refused to let ourselves get dragged under. That's the difference.
And if that looks like revenge to some people,
So be it. We'll keep doing the work. They can keep watching. You'd think it would feel like winning. Watching the courtroom verdicts roll in. Hearing the words guilty echo against cold marble walls. Knowing the lies had collapsed, one by one, under their own weight. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt quiet, like the moment after a thunderstorm passes, when everything's still wet. And nothing quite smells right. The media moved on faster than we expected. The story was good, but not shocking enough to last more than a few cycles. Still, for a few weeks, I couldn't go to the grocery store without someone whispering behind their cart, "That's her." Sometimes they said it with sympathy. Other times, curiosity and occasionally disgust. Because no matter how clean the facts were, some people couldn't wrap their heads around it. You turned your parents in. Your own brother. Over a business deal. No. Over poison. Over deception. Over values that didn't just crack, they broke. But try explaining that to someone who's never had to choose between loyalty and self-respect. Eventually, I stopped trying. The charity survived. Actually, it did more than that. The story sparked a wave of support, quiet at first, then louder. Donors returned. Volunteers increased. A few companies even matched their employees' hours with donations, just to support what they called ethical leadership. I didn't ask for that label. I didn't feel like a leader most days. Just someone who was tired of carrying secrets. Jason kept showing up the way he always had, steady. Present. Patient. If I was the one who lit the fire, he was the one who stood beside it without flinching. The staff voted unanimously to reaffirm his role as executive director. I stayed on as director of operations, but quietly. No press. No features. I didn't need a spotlight. I needed a purpose. We redesigned the food sourcing process from the ground up. No single supplier. Everything independently vetted. Regularly audited. We formed a board review panel made up of community members, some of whom had once been recipients of our meals. No more assumptions. No more favors. Only transparency. Only trust. A few months later, I was standing in the kitchen during lunch prep when someone spilled soup across the counter. It was a mess. Bright orange. Steamy. Sticky. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed. Not the polite kind. A real laugh. From somewhere deep. Because suddenly, it wasn't about scandal or shame or strategy. It was about what we'd always been trying to do. Feed people. With dignity. With care. With heart. One of our new volunteers, a college kid named Lexi, looked at me and said, "You okay?" And I nodded. I think I actually am. Jason and I never really talked about the watch again. We didn't need to. It had become a symbol of a moment, a shift, a boundary finally drawn. But one night, about 6 months after the trial, I was cleaning out a drawer and found the dish towel we'd used to wrap it. Still folded, still stained with tension, I could almost feel. I didn't throw it away. I didn't frame it. Either, I just folded it up again, placed it in a different drawer, somewhere quiet. Because it wasn't the towel's fault. It wasn't even the watch's fault. It was just the object that finally made the lie too big to ignore. One morning,
I got an email from Derek.
Just a subject line. "You don't have to hate me forever." No greeting. No apology. No context. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. But because that door, it had closed. He was doing his community service somewhere across town, in a place not unlike ours. I heard from someone that he kept his head down. Didn't cause trouble. Good. Let him earn his way back quietly. The way real change happens. As for my parents, I never opened the letter they sent from prison. It sits in the back of my closet, still sealed. Not because I'm angry, but because the ending had already written itself. Some chapters don't need a final paragraph. They just need a full stop. A few weeks ago, one of our regulars, an older man named Clarence, asked if he could help us clean after lunch. He used to sleep outside our building last winter. Now he comes early to set up chairs. Sometimes he cracks jokes with the staff. Sometimes he just sits and watches the world be kind again. When we finished mopping, he looked at me and said, "You know, most people would have just walked away. Let it all burn." I smiled. Sometimes burning it down is the only way to rebuild. He nodded. Yeah, but most people don't rebuild. They just walk away. I didn't have an answer for that. So I just said, "We're not most people." And maybe that was the moment I truly felt free. Not proud. Not vindicated. Just whole. What I learned is this. There are consequences for doing the right thing. Some people will hate you for it. Others will doubt your motives. But none of that matters if you can live with yourself afterward. Not everyone can, and maybe that's why they scream the loudest. So if you're in a place where you have to choose between being the villain in someone else's story or the hero in your own, choose yourself. Every time. This morning, I arrived at the kitchen early. The sky was still a little gray. Steam from the coffee machines curled in the air like soft smoke. Someone had left the radio on overnight. It was playing something upbeat and ridiculous. Jason was already there, sleeves rolled up, elbow deep in crates of canned corn. Everything smelled like cinnamon, coffee, and bleach. And for the first time in a long time, it all felt exactly right. Not perfect, not repaired, but real. I walked into the prep area, and someone had spilled soup on the counter again. One of the new volunteers, Lexi, was trying to clean it up with paper towels that kept disintegrating. "Messy is good," I said, grabbing a rag. "Means people are fed." She smiled. I didn't think I'd be wiping soup in a charity kitchen this summer. Neither did I said. But I meant something deeper. I never imagined this life for myself. I didn't picture sleepless nights, hard choices, or choosing truth over blood. And yet, I wouldn't change a thing. Because sometimes survival isn't about getting back what you lost. It's about building something better in the ashes. There's something strange about peace. It doesn't arrive all at once. It trickles in slowly, in moments so ordinary they almost slip past unnoticed. Like clean dishes stacked perfectly in the drying rack. Or a regular knocking on the back door 5 minutes before lunch service. Clarence always shows up early now. Or the quiet hum of conversation when the dining hall fills. Not with performance, but with presence.
That's what peace feels like.
A life where nothing is owed. Where you show up because it matters.
Where the only thing that needs proving is your consistency.
There's a lot I've lost. I've lost my parents, not to death, but to decisions I can't unsee. I've lost my brother, maybe not forever, but for now. That door remains closed. I've lost the illusion that love can fix everything. But here's what I've gained. Clarity. Boundaries. A kind of power I didn't know I was allowed to have. Not the power to control other people, but the power to say no. To walk away. To choose peace over chaos, even when chaos wears a familiar face. I still have the letter my parents sent me from prison. I haven't opened it. Maybe I never will. Not because I'm punishing them, but because not every story needs a reunion. Some stories just need an ending. And mine ended not with revenge, or rage, or closure. It ended with a choice. To keep going. To keep building. To keep loving the work more than the wounds.
I think about something Jason said once.
Back when all this first started, we were standing at the sink. The house felt too quiet. The tension was still raw. He said, "You don't have to carry everything just because you know how." And he was right. I'd carried my family's weight for so long. I forgot I was allowed to put it down. To let someone else help. To rest. That's what love looks like now. Not obligation. Not guilt. Not self-sacrifice masked as loyalty. Real love makes space. For truth. For healing. For joy that doesn't need to be earned. So here's what I want to leave you with. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel good right away. It might hurt. It might break something you thought was unbreakable. It might mean standing alone for a while. But in the end, doing the right thing is what makes room for a better life. For real peace. For real connection. For a life you can be proud of, even in the quiet moments. When no one's watching. If you've ever had to make that choice between what's easy and what's right, I see you. And if you're still standing in that gray area, wondering if you're strong enough to step out of it, you are. You don't have to keep carrying the burden just because you always have. You don't have to protect people who refuse to protect others. You're allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that said yes to everything and everyone. You're allowed to be free. So, now I'll ask you the same question I've asked myself 100 times. Did I go too far or not far enough? Tell me what you think. I'm ready to listen. And if this story meant something to you, hit subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with someone who might need it. Because truth deserves to travel. Even when it's quiet. Even when it costs something. Especially then,